In this lesson we will talk about basic expressions and creating user data and similar little automated functionalities within Cinema 4D. You will most certainly encounter a situation where you have to set up something, where you have to create some sort of automatic behavior. And we will demonstrate how to start doing those little setups on this basics lesson. It's often good practice to visualize and doodle what you actually want to achieve. In this scene, I want to do a relatively simple setup for start. So let me explain what I want to do. Let's say I want this yellow sphere to travel in this direction, and this violet sphere will scale according to this travel. So I basically want this yellow sphere to travel and to enlarge automatically this sphere. So this sphere should grow in all directions. You can do that actually by setting keyframes and adding them, but that is really clumsy and it's not flexible at all, and it's not transferable, and it's really a bad idea. The best idea is to create an expression. And Cinema 4D offers you really easy tools to create expressions. So let's first establish that little tiny technical part. So we'll dissect this scene a little bit. So let's select this yellow sphere, and if we want to move it in this direction, you can clearly see here, this is the X direction. I can undo that. And the scale of this violet sphere is actually this radius. So we basically want the position X to drive the radius. Really simple. And this simple task in Cinema 4D can be created really quickly by creating a set driver command. So let's do just that. Let's select that yellow sphere, and here under coordinates tab you can see this X value. We will right click here, and here under animation we will select set driver. We will select this violet sphere, and here under object we will right click on this radius and we will say set driven. In this case we can go absolute, and you will notice that something changed. Also aside to that, you can notice that an expression tag here has been made for the violet sphere. And if you look closer, you will see that this violet sphere has changed its radius to 0 centimeters. And what actually happened is next. Let's open that expression and see what do we have inside. And here is a tiny bit of espresso that will serve as a setup, as our automation setup. So let's dock it by dragging this guy here. Just a workflow preference, nothing special. It really helps me to keep things much more cleaner. And I'll go here, view. I will say center node, so they will appear in the center of Espresso window. Here we can see three things. We can see our yellow sphere position X. On this side we can see violet sphere radius, and in between a range mapper node. If we click on this node, we will get attributes in Attributes Manager. We can see some settings here, and it's really now the time to dissect them. First we will start with these two guys, input lower and input upper. And this input lower and input upper are considering the driver object, and this output lower and output upper are considering the driven object. So what numbers should we put here? Well, we have to establish that. Firstly, we will select our yellow sphere and see where is it positioned in our 3D space. As you can see, it is minus 300 centimeters from the center. So let's select that range mapper node, and in the input lower, as our starting value, we will type minus 300. And as our upper value, we will put 0. can actually put any other value we want, but we want to use 0. So when this sphere comes to 0 position, it will have maximum 100% influence to a driven object. So let's put 0. And that's it for the driver, in this case this yellow guy. Now let's consider our driven object, our violet object. Here you can see its radius is currently 0. And if I try to change that, it won't let me. It will always snap back to 0 because Espresso takes control over that property. And the only way to change this starting radius is by telling it here in the output lower. So if we want this violet sphere to be 100 centimeters in radius, just like this one, for a starting value, we will use 100 here. And watch what happens now. You can sometimes come into a situation when you have to refresh the Espresso system. So just press this little guy here and it will refresh the system. So let's now test this. So if I pull this yellow sphere in this direction, something should happen, but actually it doesn't happen. What if I go the opposite way? Also nothing happens. Let us undo that and check why nothing is happening. And the reason is this output upper. So if the input for the radius is 100 and the output is 100, it means it's completely the same regardless of what we do. We should put another number here, a higher. So let's just double that. Let's try 200. And we will tell the Espresso system that the maximum size of our sphere should double in this 300 unit span. I hope this makes sense. It's really, really logical. And the best thing is really to try it out. So now, if I will pull this guy, my sphere will grow. And once I travel 300 centimeters, I will reach double the diameter of this, double the radius of this violet sphere. You can check this. It's almost here, 199 point something. And if you pull it a little bit more, it will grow even more. See, it goes over 200. The reason for it is we didn't clamp the value. So let's enable this clamp upper because we want to clamp this 200 value. So we won't let this violet sphere to become bigger than 200 units in radius. So if we enable this, you can instantly see the change. So now, if I will try to move over 300 units, it won't exceed that 200 centimeters in radius. Now, as you can see, if I go the opposite direction, the radius will shrink. And that is because we haven't clamped the lower values. So let's try clamping the lower values and see the change. So now it won't pass 200 in radius in this side, nor it will shrink under 100. Espresso is all about logic. And this range mapper node, it's the most commonly used node in Espresso. It translates various inputs and outputs. And so, for example, you can change the inputs from degrees, percent, any number to something else. So if you want to translate something, some values, you will use the range mapper node. The problem with Espresso is if you right click, you will see a multitude of nodes, and this can be a little bit intimidating, especially for the users without any experience in some sort of a visual programming. But guess what? You don't have to know every single node. You just have to know a tiny few things to create setups and build upon that knowledge. The powerful thing about Espresso is that everything is animatable. You can animate anything. You can pull anything you want. You can pull even materials. And you can see it can be a little bit scary. So you can actually feel the power that lies within Espresso. Another good thing about Espresso is that it works seamlessly with other tools. So let me delete just this. It can distract us a bit. Let's say that I will add a vibrate tag to this yellow sphere and enable a regular pulse and enable position. And if I press play now, watch what happens. It will vibrate. If I go back now and put, let's say, here a bigger value, let's say 500. And let's see what happens. We have some sort of a beats per second setup. I know this can be a little bit too technical, too difficult at a start, but this is really important. If you put enough time to understand these basics about coordinate and rotation system inside Cinema 4D, about basics of Espresso, then you will open yourself a door to a completely new world in 3D. Let's talk about user data now.